Welcome back to Evolving Waves, where we ride the tides of adversity to reach the shores of success. We've got Jonathan Boncek back with us today for part 4, the final piece of our extraordinarily insightful conversation about I don't even want to say about what, because there have been so many different topics that we have discussed in our time together. So if you have not listened to the first 3 or watched the first 3 episodes, please be sure to do so. It is, I would say, a chronological storyline that we're following, even though today's piece is going to be a little bit different than the last 3. You're definitely going to want to get those last 3 down just for points of reference. And with that said, before we get into the crux of our final episode with him, we'd like to give a second to shout out our sponsor.
Before we get into his story, we want to quickly shout out our sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Stingray Branding, a national lead generation focused marketing agency that helps businesses generate an ROI from their marketing efforts, including web design, social media, Google search, email, automations, and more. Learn more about them at stingraybranding.com.
And with that said, Jonathan, welcome back for part 4.
Excited to be here, Neil.
Always excited to talk to you about pretty much anything. We've talked about everything from Occam's razor to Newton's third law to Family Guy to hypnosis, pretty much everything you can imagine, and we've talked about. And typically when we have guests, we wrap up the episode with what happens next. Where do you go from here? There are so many things we've talked about that I think each one of those probably deserve their own questions as to where you go next. So let's start by talking about therapy as a whole and RTT as a whole. And obviously things are evolving. They're growing. Social media is growing, evolving. AI is growing, evolving. People can now make themselves look completely different just with a couple clicks of a button with AI. I mean, before AI, it was Photoshop. You could just photo edit yourself to look better, but now AI makes it frighteningly easy to do. So with all that said, we talked about social media and its dangerous impacts, especially on kids. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, where do you see RTT and hypnosis and therapy as a whole going as the technology that surrounds these people's minds that you're working with is improving? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, great question. AI, I don't think we can't ignore it, right? It is coming and it's here. And it's interesting because I do feel like the services that are about human connection are going to be the last to be replaced by AI. And that being said, you can go on to ChatGPT and put your problems in and it'll probably give you some sort of answer. But we're still missing that human connection. And we are social creatures. We need to be around that community. And so I just encourage people, as far as if you're struggling with an issue, yes, you can get some tidbits off of AI. But being in a space and talking to somebody that can empathize, that you can see their reactions, because how we sympathize with people is actually match their facial expressions. If I'm crying, you're not going to be sitting there smiling at me. You're going to look concerned in that body language. And now I feel heard. I feel seen. And so, I think with social media and AI, we just have to be sure to remember that our human connections are really when we feel, alive as a human being and with people. And so seek out those human connections. And I think that's also the problem of social media is that people isolate themselves and they can just scroll all day long. But those people typically are probably having some mental struggles about feeling enough, feeling fulfilled, or feeling happy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, you touched on it with social media. I mean, AI and social media are kind of exploding together. There's something called slop where you intentionally just go out and create garbage and pass it off as real. And it's harmless in the sense that, like, if you have, I don't know, let's say, for example, you go on to one of these AI apps or sites, whatever, and you say, here, give me a whale that walks like a bear. Okay, fine. That's funny. Cool, whatever. It's a lot more dangerous when you tell it, hey, simulate the president of the United States doing XYZ, and oh no, you can think of literally anything. It's limitless. So it's a little frightening when you realize that the kids have access to these things that can do quite literally anything. Their imaginations are not limited to just their own minds anymore. You can just type in a few words in a prompt in an app, and now their imaginations are playing out on this screen. And if it's good enough, it can be passed off as real, that this is reality. So I asked you in one of the previous episodes about the difference between perception and reality and fact versus real and all those distinctions. Do you see yourself going to have potentially more trouble connecting with clients, especially the younger ones, when they say, well, I saw this, I saw that? Turns out it's AI, but you're not going to know that. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, are you going to find yourself having more trouble combating all this?
That's an interesting question, Neil. I don't, I'm an eternal optimist, so I don't want to think in the future that I'm going to have trouble with it. And I'm really going to lean on that connection piece. And I realize that the younger generations are going to be more apt to be on screens. However, it's like, let's reflect on how this is making you feel. If I'm going to talk to them, it's like, how do they feel? And I would imagine that most of those are going to be negative feelings from interacting with it. So now we can have a reference point for how that makes you feel. So you have to be able to, kids, get off of that and start connecting with people individually and being in the presence of real people. And one more part of that is, how do we strengthen our discernment about what is real and what isn't? And because we can all be fooled about what's out there. But it really comes down to discernment. What am I going to, if I'm going to see something, am I going to pick that up and believe that? Now, we can all be fooled, and I can be fooled as well, but this is where it's really important. The body is so intelligent. And, when a woman is pregnant in utero, the heart develops before the brain. And so this is where we need to sit, because we get stuck up here. And yes, there's a lot going on in here, but there's actually a portion of the heart that has neurocells in it, about 40,000 thinking cells, and actually sends more information from the heart to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. So that gets into feeling. And again, on our second episode, I said feelings are the realest thing you have. So speaking to those children that are talking about AI and social media, again, that's why how do they feel? So how can you feel the opposite of that? And let's use our imagination to think about what situations, what type of communities, what type of interaction, what kind of activities can we do to feel more grounded within the heart, which is peace and love and acceptance and relaxation. Because when you relax, you can actually almost sit down into the heart.
Makes sense. I know that there are very unique connections between the neurons and just plain feelings, the human connection, as you talk about. Correct me if I'm wrong, it feels to me like AI could get there to the point where it can, to some degree, match the neurons, the pure intelligence. It will not. It likely will not, because I don't want to say never, but it's very unlikely it's ever going to get to the point where it can replicate the heart and the feeling and the human connection to that. How do you get that across to your clients?
How do I get it across that AI is not going to be able to replicate human interaction? Let's find some references where you felt truly loved, accepted, and safe. Is that on AI? Is that on the screen? Or is that when it's a human interaction, when you're getting a hug from somebody that's loved, when you need that touch of human interaction, of being held, or, feeling there's a great accomplishment and you want to be celebrated with people, and they're celebrating and they're proud of you and you're proud of yourself. Those are real interactions. So again, trying to find reference points for people to lean on within their life and say, look, you haven't had those feelings in a long time. Is it because you've been locked up in your house, in your bedroom on TikTok all day long? So you have the evidence of what you need to do. Now, when I was listening to you, Neil, a thought came to my head, because I was like, I'm in my 40s now. I don't recall any movie ever seen where AI winds up being a good thing. If you really think about Hollywood, right? I mean, Terminator 2 was one of my favorite movies as a little kid. And I'm like, didn't people not watch this movie? But from The Matrix to iRobot, all these,
maybe Iron Man.
Maybe, right? And so it is, are we giving ourselves our own hints? So, I digress. I just had that thought, and I was like, this is an interesting thought when it comes to, hey, maybe that's a reference point for young kids. Have you ever seen a movie where AI wind up being good? Let's utilize AI. It is an intelligence. I mean, is it artificial? Where does it come from? It's compounding, it's scraping the internet. But we are human beings, and that true interaction, that true joy. Are you finding joy? Are you finding love? Are you finding connection? These higher vibrational feelings that are away from what we talked about on the first episode of hate, resentment, and judgment are lower. You can find those on social media and on AI. Can you find these over here? And let's start to gear your behavior, gear your thoughts to connect with individuals.
Gotcha. So I hate to make this at all about me, but for 10 seconds I will. I hate gaslighting. I absolutely loathe the idea of it. It's a lot of what people do on social media now. It's one of my biggest pitfalls personally. I mean, I'll open up this. He's the guest, but I'll open up. It's one of my biggest pitfalls when people gaslight and they just try to make you think that you're a moron just because you don't accept their perceived reality of it. Done making it about me. Back to you. We're going to shift this to you dealing with your potential clients and your children as well. Do you find it more difficult as a therapist and as a father to combat gaslighting, be it from an internet troll who has nothing better to do, or from a 12-year-old at school who's potentially, hopefully not, but maybe bullying your daughter? Do you find it harder to do that now to combat that gaslighting versus 10, 15 years ago?
I think it's a bigger challenge because it's thrown at us more and more, to your point. And this is where we have to, the amount that it's thrown at in our faces with online and social media is to the degree that we need to go inside and strengthen that aspect of self-love. And that is what I preach to my children. If Timmy across the street calls you a jerk, do you believe him? If Timmy called you a tree, would you believe him? So why are you attaching yourself to one thing that Timmy says? Because what you're doing is giving your power to Timmy. And this is tough. And when people are gaslighting you, they are trying to steal your power away from and take that up and say, you're an idiot, you're a moron for thinking that. Well, all of a sudden, if it was you, you're taking on my opinion of yourself for your own self. And so I think it is a big problem in our world, Neil, and it really just comes down to the biggest opinion of yourself needs to be a positive self-image and self-worth.
Which makes perfect sense to me. The other potential problem with that is the opposite, or doing the opposite of something terrible does not necessarily mean it's good. Example being, the best possible image you can have of yourself is the positive self-image that you have. What if that gets out of hand? What if you become arrogant, conceited, narcissistic? How do you balance that?
Good question. Because these aren't linear. They're circular. I can be so humble, I can become arrogant in my humility. Or spiritual bypass. Well, I'm just so X, Y, and Z. And so, the metaphor of a circle, and this is a circular thing, maybe I don't want to get caught up in this circle. I want to sit in the center to be able to be objective in it. Now, my mission is to remain humble in all of this, because pulling in my spiritual aspect, I don't believe it's me. I'm just a conduit for whatever's happening, and I want to be a vessel for this. And so, understanding, if we go back to perspectives, if I become so arrogant, so humble that I become arrogant, now I've inflated myself to, now we go back to the bully, diminish you. I'm so good that you're so bad, because this is now rooted in judgment. And I don't believe we're here to learn how to judge. I think it's the opposite. We're here to learn how to accept. So how do I keep myself humble is honestly just reiterating to myself that that I am just a vessel for this. And I don't want that to sound arrogant because I go through my own challenges. How to remain humble as well in my 40s is actually I do something called a misogi every year, which is a Japanese term for ethnical and physical cleansing. Do something insanely hard every single year physically. And for me, I have a group of friends for the past 4 years. We do a hike in the Appalachian Trail for 4 or 5 days, carrying packs. And it is the hardest thing I do. And so that humbles me. So getting physically humbled is a really good way to, A, grow, but remember that we're all the process of life, not the product of life.
That makes sense. It does, because anytime that you face adversity, you can overcome it or you can just succumb to it. Mm-hmm. You have done one of those two things your entire life, never the other one. You've always overcome it and been better for it, as we touched on before. Physical, mental, spiritual adversity being overcome, I think, definitely can humble you. And I wanted to talk to you about that next. Can you, without giving away any names or otherwise violating HIPAA,
sure,
can you give us an example of someone that you've worked with that you have seen come out strong on the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working with a woman this summer who just felt like she was stuck in her life. And a young woman in her 30s who has left her career job because she wanted to do her own thing. And she just found herself procrastinating on taking that. She'd already kind of organized, but she's like, there's something there keeping me from making it to the next level. And so we went into the session, and she was viewed as kind of not the black sheep, but the one that did everything differently. But the love that her parents gave her was conditional. She didn't make the good grades, and her mom would lose her mind on her. And her mom had a little bit of narcissistic tendencies, and her dad would retreat when the mom would lose her mind. Dad would retreat. So what she picked up that her parents only love her if it's conditional in the way that they're doing it. And her parents didn't necessarily agree with her new direction in career life. So her subconscious was blocking her from taking action because she didn't want to lose the love from her parents. And that was a belief system that was picked up as children, because children will always, always put their parents up on a pedestal, no matter what. And they don't have that logic that we spoke about in episode 2 that, oh, well, they're just parents and they're fighting and they're going through divorce or X, Y, and Z. They're saying, something's wrong with me. They won't stop fighting. My love's not good enough. That was actually what came through for them to stop fighting. But if I actually do what they say and exactly the way they are, they're very nice to me. So that subconscious was literally, she was causing her procrastination.
Man, I'm lucky I had good parents. I didn't have to deal with any of that. I guess that's why a lot of kids, not knowing any better, say it's my fault that my parents got divorced.
Yeah. And to that, Neil, parents are human. I'm a parent. All parents are human. And we are flawed. And inherently, we have to remember our humanity. We want to be flawsome, So this is just kind of flawsome.
FLAW.
SLM.
That's pretty cool. Okay, go ahead.
And this is just a little kind of some RTT nuggets for all the parents out there listening. Children, as I mentioned, need to be seen and heard. They need to feel loved. They need to feel significant and somebody to be proud of them. So in hypnosis, we go in to that alpha theta brain state that I mentioned. Every single person goes through alpha brain state twice a day, into sleep and out of sleep. And so when your children are falling to sleep, get in their ear. I love you so much. I'm so grateful to be your daddy. I love hearing you. I love seeing you grow, and you're so important to me. And they don't even have to respond. It's going into the subconscious the first 5 minutes that they fall asleep. So that is a way to give your children that love, that significance. And if you mess up and lose your mind around your kids again, you're human. I do it too. You tell them how much you love them, and they look, hey, daddy messed up. I was really frustrated from work, and I shouldn't have yelled at you. It's not your fault. You have to verbalize that to them. because otherwise they're going to internalize that. Verbalize over they'll internalize.
I think I'm going to rewatch all 4 of these episodes before I become a parent. And while I become a parent is sort of a playbook for how to parent.
I'm still figuring it out now.
You figuring it out. I mean, God, what is your final form as a parent? That's got to be actual perfection.
I mean, it is. I like to say my kids are my greatest teachers. So, because I think I have it figured out. I might be home in an hour and it's hitting the fan, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I guess everyone has a plan until they're punched in the mouth.
Says Mike Tyson, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. Came across that quote in a totally different context the other day. Crazy how that's come back around to have relevance today. So that's the story of success for your client. We've talked about the personal success that you've had, overcoming everything from the childhood bullying to the business falling apart. Did you ever think in those moments, at any point in the vulnerability part of your growth, from the childhood issues to the eclipse to 2019, did you ever think you'd be sitting here, and not just on this podcast, did you ever think that you'd be a thought leader of sorts in the world of making ourselves all better? Did you ever think that was possible?
No. Well, that's an interesting that.
Or was it a dream of yours? Did you ever think that was something that you aspired to be? Let alone?
Yeah, I can remember when I was in 6th grade, I had a project where it was like kind of make a self book, and I remember it was to list out like a quality, and I remember I asked my mom, and I was like, "What quality?" And she's like, "You're pleasant." And I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" But when I shared it at school, they said, "Yeah, you are very pleasant to be around." And so that's always been there of like, how can I create, my environments to create this feeling of ease around them? But again, backing up a few episodes ago, I talked about like my mantra, and I don't know what I want to do is and I'm being 100% transparent. I want to find financial freedom, but it has to be through helping people. And I don't know what that looks like. And I'm just putting it out there. And so to be able to be open enough, because I told you about the breathwork thing, and have that courage to follow through, I knew it would lead me to somewhere, because I had that I want to be a vessel for love to pass through me. And I think if, in the aspect of manifestation, you don't get what you want, you get who you are or what you are. And I want to be a beacon of love. And that is literally what I strive to do in my life.
Think you've succeeded in that.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, pretty comfortably crossed that threshold. So yeah, we have gone through everything, Jonathan, from start to finish. Your life is definitely a story that I think people can learn from, and I think as you continue to go forward, you're going to write more chapters that people can learn from even more deeply. So let's end with that. What do you have lined up in the future? What's next for you? What do you hope to accomplish? Talk about what's next for Jonathan Boncek.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love within the next year to launch my own podcast. I love this platform and medium to be able to get out information and share. I love working one-on-one with clients, because when they feel that and see that breakthrough themselves, that brings me a lot of joy for them. But I also understand that I can't scale. That's hard to scale that business. And so creating that workshop of the 7 pillars of transformation, I do an online workshop where it's a group coaching session over 7 weeks, as well as I've taken that workshop and packaged it. I got 2 business right now in Charleston about creating a conscious culture within that. So these are different avenues that I can be able to help people. Ultimately, I'd like to be able to present on stages, because I feel like my reach will go farther within the podcasting in that. But still being able to be grounded and remain humble within this, because this is all a gift.
When that day comes, when you are presenting on stages, when you are doing webinars and having your own podcasts and any other medium you choose to go down, remember this conversation, this interaction we had today. We can say that it started here. I believe this is one of the first podcasts you've done. I don't know if we are the first, but we're one of the first that you've done. So grateful to Jonathan would be an understatement. I think that there's probably enough content in here that people can make great life changes, whether it's addiction that they want to combat, whether it's being bullied as a kid, or as an adult, or as a grown adult online. There's information in here as to how to combat that, how we go forward with public discourse. I think we've touched on that as well. And we talked about the nuts and bolts of it with RTT and hypnosis. And if you're going through anything, whatever it may be, chances are you're going to find something in one of these 4 episodes that's going to help you get through it on the other side. And don't take my word for it. You can look at Jonathan, you can look at Megan, you can look at Joe, the last couple of guests we've had. They've come out on the other sides of their adversity. So last question for you, Jonathan. I think this is the first time I've ever asked it in this meta of a fashion.
Cool.
But we love cutting up our interviews into quick reels on social media. So with that in mind, in 60 seconds or less, since you are in a very unique position to be talking about this here, if you wouldn't mind just speaking to the people and kind of telling them what I just said, but in a much more professional and more knowledgeable fashion, you can get through whatever it is you're going through.
Absolutely. I think each one of us, again, nature does not replicate. And so each one of us has a very unique skill set and story that it can actually help other people. And we were all intended to be here. And whether you like it or not, you were intended to be here. And so that is for a reason. If it's just to be a great father or mother, or if it's to do something great, when you can lean into that authenticity within your heart of this is who I am and accept yourself and then love yourself and understand that your story can help other people, then you will become magnetic and people will gravitate towards you and you will find so much connection and fulfillment that all stems from authenticity. So lean into that.
One last quick follow-up. In a similar vein, what do you have to say to people who are struggling through a really difficult time right now and they don't believe that the other side is there? Mm-hmm. Talk to them about getting them through this and getting to be better, not just in spite of, but because of the difficult times they're facing.
Sure. And I'll answer that with kind of a metaphor that there's an infinity of forest in a single acorn, but that acorn has to get crushed to open up and germinate. And so if you feel like you're getting crushed in life, then know that on the other side of that pain and discomfort is actually a better version of yourself. If you choose to look at it that way, because you have that choice. So look at that challenge, look at those hardships, is actually life is happening for you so that you can actually become a better version of yourself. Because if you look at it as life is happening to you, then you'll stay in that victim mentality.
Couldn't have ended it any better myself. Just thank you. And wow, what a library of content, almost a museum of sorts of audio visual content that we've gotten from Jonathan Boncek on how to better yourself and just how to keep perspective on things. Cause it's not always easy to do, but if you do, when you do, I'll speak more positively. When you do it, look what awaits you on the other side.
There you go.
An endless world of possibilities.
Love it.
Jonathan, but thank you so much.
Neil, I appreciate being here.
I appreciate your time. Guys, just remember, in the face of adversity always lies the potential for growth, resilience, and success. If you don't believe me, if you think those are just pretty words, look no further than the last few guests we've had. Jonathan, thank you so much. Again, I can't thank you enough for all the information and the knowledge and the insight that you've shared.
Thank you. Enjoyed being here, Neil.
I'm so glad. And I hope you guys enjoy listening to and watching this as much as we enjoyed creating this content. So join us every other Monday as we continue to explore inspiring stories of overcoming challenges to help you thrive in your journey of life.